I want you to picture a scene from 1944. We are in a muddy field in France, just a few miles from the German front lines. A French farmer is watching from behind a hedgerow. He sees 4 American soldiers struggling to fix the tread on a massive 30-ton Sherman tank. It looks heavy. It looks dangerous. Suddenly, one of the soldiers trips. He bumps into the tank, and the entire tank, all 30 tons of steel, bounces. It wobbles like a pool float. Then another soldier gets frustrated, walks over, grabs the tank by the bottom, and lifts the entire thing over his head with one hand. The French farmer rubs his eyes. He thinks he's lost his mind. He thinks he's drunk too much wine, but he hasn't. He has just witnessed the most secret weapon in the United States arsenal. He has just seen the Ghost Army. For 50 years, you couldn't talk about this. If you were in this unit and you told your wife what you did during the war, you could be sent to federal prison. The Pentagon kept the files locked in a vault until 1996. Why? Because the deception was so good, they thought they might need to use it again in the Cold War against the Russians. We are talking about a unit of 1,100 men who were tasked with the impossible. They had to pretend to be a force of 30,000. They had to draw the fire of the Nazi panzer divisions, and they had to do it without any heavy weapons. If the Germans found out the truth, if they realized these tanks were made of rubber and air, every single one of these Americans would be slaughtered in minutes. This is the story of the artists, the actors, and the sound engineers who conned Adolf Hitler. This is the story of the army that never existed. Welcome to Valor and Heritage. So how do you build a fake army? You don't go to West Point, you go to art school. In 1943, the Army went on a strange recruiting drive. They went to the Pratt Institute in New York, the Art Students League, and the Cooper Union. They weren't looking for guys who could shoot a rifle or throw a grenade. They were looking for guys who could sketch, paint, sew, and design. They recruited fashion designers, including a young Bill Blass, who would later become one of the most famous fashion icons in American history. They recruited painter Ellsworth Kelly. They recruited set designers from Broadway. They gathered all these creative bohemian types and threw them into a unit called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The regular Army soldiers looked at these guys and thought they were crazy. They were sketching in their sketchbooks during drills. They were sewing uniforms. They were arguing about color theory while digging foxholes. But they were about to invent a new way of fighting. The Ghost Army relied on 4 types of deception. First, the visual. They had a battalion devoted to camouflage, but their job wasn't to hide things, it was to show things. They developed the M4 Sherman balloon. It was an inflatable rubber tank. When it was deflated, it fit in a duffel bag. When you pumped it up with an air compressor, it looked exactly like a 30-ton killing machine from 100 yards away. They even had fake airplanes, fake trucks, and fake cannons. But a tank that doesn't make noise is suspicious, right? That brings us to the second pillar, sonic deception. This was the masterpiece. The Army recruited sound engineers from Bell Labs. They went to Fort Knox and recorded the sounds of real tanks, real trucks, and real bridge building equipment on wire recorders, the ancestors of tape recorders. Then they built massive 500-pound speakers called water buffaloes and mounted them on half-tracks. These speakers were so loud they could be heard from 15 miles away. They could mix the sounds like a DJ. They could make it sound like a tank column was moving left or moving right or stopping for the night. They could play the sound of sergeants screaming orders. It was audio theater designed to terrify the Germans. In June 1944, shortly after D-Day, the Ghost Army landed in France, and the roadshow began. Their job was dangerous. They would rush into a sector that the real 2nd Armored Division had just left. The real tanks would sneak away at night to attack somewhere else, and the Ghost Army would set up their rubber tanks in the exact same spots. Their goal was to convince the Germans that the Americans hadn't moved. They had to be perfect. If they put a rubber tank in a field, they couldn't just leave it there. A real tank leaves tracks, so they had bulldozers carve fake tracks into the mud leading up to the balloons. A real army creates trash, so they would drive around throwing empty ration cans and cigarette butts on the ground. A real army hangs laundry, so they would string up clotheslines with wet socks and underwear, just so the German spotter planes would see signs of life. But the craziest part was the acting. This was the third pillar, atmosphere. The soldiers were given patches of real units. One day they were the 75th Infantry. The next day they were the 2nd Armored. They would go into local French towns, find a bar, order some wine, and start talking loudly about their plans. Oh man, I hope the general doesn't make us attack to the east tomorrow. They knew there were German spies in the bar. They were feeding them lies. Can you imagine the nerve that took? You were sitting there, armed with nothing but a pistol and a fake patch, pretending to be part of a tough tank division, knowing that if the Germans call your bluff, you have zero backup. You are literally a sitting duck. There is a famous story where 2 Ghost Army soldiers were guarding a rubber tank. 2 Frenchmen rode by on bicycles. One Frenchman looked at the tank and said in French, "Look at that tank, it looks strange." The other Frenchman stopped, walked up to the tank, and kicked it. It didn't go clang, it went thump. The Ghost Army soldiers froze. They thought, the jig is up. But the Frenchman just looked confused, shrugged, and rode away. The soldiers realized that the idea of a fake tank was so insane that even when people saw it, their brains refused to accept it. We are about to witness the Ghost Army's masterpiece, a deception so big it helped end the war. But before we cross the Rhine, I have a mission for you. If you love stories of American ingenuity and secret history, inflate that subscribe button. Don't worry, it's real. We are uncovering the classified files one by one. Join the operation. Now, let's fool the Reich. March 1945. The end of the war was in sight, but the Allies had one massive obstacle left: the Rhine River. It was the natural border of Germany. The Germans were dug in on the other side, waiting. The 9th Army needed to cross, but if they tried to cross where the Germans expected them, it would be a massacre. So the generals called in the Ghost Army for one last show, Operation Viersen. The plan was simple. The Ghost Army would set up 10 miles south of the real crossing point. They would pretend to be 2 entire infantry divisions, 30,000 men. They pulled out all the stops. They inflated 600 dummy tanks and trucks. They set up fake artillery batteries. They used their flash canisters, devices that mimicked the flash of cannon fire at night, to make the Germans think they were ranging their guns. But the sonic deception was the key. They set up their massive speakers along the riverbank. They played the sounds of pontoon bridges being built. Clank, bang, engine revs, men swearing. They played it all night long. Across the river, the German listening posts heard it. They panicked. They thought, the Americans are building a bridge right here. The German commanders moved their reserves, their tanks, and their artillery to face the Ghost Army. They shelled the empty fields for hours. The Ghost Army soldiers sat in their foxholes, laughing as expensive German shells blew up cheap rubber balloons. Meanwhile, 10 miles north, the real 9th Army slipped into the water. It was dead quiet. There were almost no German defenders. They had all been lured away by the artists. The real army crossed the Rhine with almost zero casualties. It was a perfect victory.
General Simpson, the commander of the Ninth Army, later sent a letter to the Ghost Army commander saying, "You saved the lives of thousands of my men." When the Germans finally realized what had happened, it was too late. The Americans were deep into Germany. The Ghost Army packed up their balloons, turned off their speakers, and vanished like smoke. They defeated the enemy without firing a shot. They proved that sometimes the best weapon isn't a bigger gun, it's a smarter idea. The war ended. The men of the Ghost Army went home, but their mission didn't end. They were sworn to secrecy. They couldn't tell their parents. They couldn't tell their wives. Imagine coming home from the war and people ask, "What did you do?" And you have to say, "Oh, I blew up tanks," knowing that you actually blew up balloons. Many of them went back to art. Bill Blass became a fashion giant. Ellsworth Kelly became a world-famous minimalist painter. Art Kane became a famous photographer. They channeled their creativity into culture, shaping the look of modern America. But a huge part of their life was a blank page. It wasn't until 1996, 50 years later, that the Pentagon finally declassified the mission. Suddenly, these old men could talk. They opened their attics and pulled out sketches they had hidden for half a century. They told their families the truth. The world was shocked. You did what? Finally, in 2022, the United States Congress awarded the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal. It is the highest civilian honor in the country. Only a few of the men were still alive to receive it, but the recognition was there. They weren't just pranksters, they were tactical geniuses. They estimated that their deceptions saved between 15,000 and 30,000 American lives. That's 30,000 men who came home, had children, and built the country we know today, all because a bunch of art students knew how to put on a good show. They proved that in the art of war, the art is just as important as the war. If you think this is the coolest unit in World War II history, leave a comment. The Ghost Army. Next time on Valor and Heritage, we're entering the shadowy world of espionage. We're going to meet a woman so dangerous, the Nazis called her the Limping Lady. She had a wooden leg, a network of spies, and she was the most wanted woman in France. Get ready for Virginia Hall. I'm Valor. Trust nothing but your eyes, and even then, look twice.